morning. It is good to be together today. It is especially good to have a reason to drive out and see the ocean this morning. You have it made out here. Driving in from the big foggy city to this beautiful island. Thank you so much for welcoming me. As Catherine mentioned, I'm a seminarian and a ministerial intern, serving First UU in Houston and attending Starr King School for the Seminary. So I have managed to make it through 4 years of seminary, dozens of sermons, hundreds of pages of self-reflection and academic writing, 6, almost 7 months of a ministerial internship, and multiple interviews with ministers. And somehow I have avoided ever really fully articulating my own theology. But the time has come for me to actually put words to what I believe. Not only do I know that this will be important to any future congregation that I serve, but I'm right now in a UU theology course this semester, and I have an assignment that is to write my own theological autobiography. So it is time. And so far, the most helpful way for me to get these ideas out of my head and my heart and onto the page is to ask myself, what do I believe is true? I have a professor at Starr King who often asks us to pause in the middle of our studies and imagine the world that we are building. Sometimes we do this through a guided meditation, and we spend time in class with our eyes closed, really imagining what it will feel like to arrive one day to a place of equanimity and peace for all beings. We think and talk in class about how the work that we have dedicated our lives to is changing the world and is moving us toward that place of betterment for everybody. My professor calls this place the vast horizon, and every one of us has one. Those who came before us did their work to get this place of peace and love ready for us, and now it's our time to do the work. Now we are entrusted to move and work toward that vast horizon of peace and love to make it ready for those who come after us. The vast horizon that I imagine is one of ease and peace, of interconnection and belonging. It's a horizon of love and security, and what I imagine is a place for all beings. For some people in their lives, that horizon is something that they call heaven, a guarantee of something softer and kinder, accessible only through the doorway of death. I don't believe in that heaven. I think after we die, our bodies return to the carbon from which we came, a process that I find incredibly mystical and humbling and purposeful, all on its own. For me, as with many Unitarian Universalists, the potential of heaven and the work of making it so is always right here and now. Today's heaven, my chance to live in peace and with love alongside each of you, this place has been nurtured through time by those long gone and who dreamed of that horizon of peace and love for us. The many religious beliefs that comprise our world each have their own vast horizon. And I really do believe that if you asked most people, they would say that their vast horizon is a place of peace and love. What distinguishes theologies of liberation from theologies of exclusion is who gets access to that place of peace and love. This future of peace and love that I believe can be real and to which I have dedicated my life and my life's work is a place for all beings, human and otherwise, regardless of class, creed, breed, ancestry, health, wealth, or reason. It's peace and love for all, no qualifiers, period, full stop. The idea of what we're building and of where we're going together gives me a helpful framework for determining my truth, for telling you what I believe. When I'm considering what's true for me, I ask myself, is this widening or narrowing the pathway to peace and love for all? I traveled to Palestine in January on a witness and solidarity delegation. Our delegation was comprised of about a dozen religious professionals and organized by the Unitarian Universalists for Justice in the Middle East, a coalition founded in 1971 whose president is named Dana Ashwawi, and she lives in Houston. In the nearly 2 weeks that we spent there, I experienced Palestine with my full body, mind, and soul. I drank small cups of bitter coffee with women who were teaching their village basic CPR and first aid because ambulances often won't respond to Palestinian medical emergencies. I listened to stories of life under occupation told by people who said, "Please don't record me. What I'm telling you would have me put into prison for terrorism." I smelled the piles of garbage that mounted within and around refugee camps, since most Palestinian neighborhoods are without services, including trash pickup. I touched the concrete and razor wire apartheid wall that separates families, but is covered with brave and beautiful graffiti that uplifts the fight for freedom. And I stood in sacred spaces and I felt the sunlight streaming through stained glass that had been shattered by gunfire. We were hosted on our delegation by Catholic nuns in a beautiful old guest house across the street from the old city of Jerusalem. There was a glass-enclosed room on the property, and I spent the early, dark mornings doing breath work and gazing across the Kidron Valley at the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. The Islamic call to prayer echoed alongside the roosters that announced daybreak, and I watched the sunrise splash on some of the most sacred religious sites in the world. In one glance, from where I sat and breathed and welcomed the day, I saw the rooftop cross of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the site where Jesus Christ was crucified and buried. I saw the dome of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the site where Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad ascended into heaven. And I saw the flags waving near the Western Wall, the remaining Second Temple structure and sacred Jewish prayer site. This trip centered the Palestinian experience. We ate in Palestinian restaurants, learned from Palestinian scholars and activists, and heard the firsthand accounts of life under occupation from Palestinians, many of whom came from families who had lived on and tended that land for generations. We even traveled in and out of the country through Amman, Jordan, using the land crossing, as most Palestinians do not have a passport and cannot travel through Tel Aviv. I learned a lot while I was there, and I journaled even more, 67 pages actually. In preparation for this sermon, I went back and counted my pages, scribbling learnings and questions throughout the days and heartfelt reflections at night. Before going to bed each night, I selected 5 photos from the day to send to friends and family back home with an audio message explaining my experiences. I didn't want to forget. I wanted to be able to tell the truth of what I was experiencing. Everything was so beautiful. Everything was so heartbreaking. On our 4th day in Jerusalem, we met Tarek Bakri, a Palestinian-born researcher and computer engineer. While studying abroad, Tarek met Palestinians from the diaspora who told him about the villages and towns that their families fled during the Nakba in 1948, when the creation of the State of Israel displaced approximately 750,000 Palestinians. They would show Tarek photos of their homes and villages And during his holidays, he would return back to Palestine and visit these same villages and take photographs of what they look like now and send them back to his friends. Many of the villages had been destroyed or depopulated, meaning that the residents were forcibly removed or the structures fell into disrepair. In other situations, Israeli families were granted or given Palestinian homes and lands, being told that the Palestinian family had sold the home, had abandoned it, or given it up, which was almost always a lie. Now, Tarek receives photos and stories from all over the world, from Palestinians living in the diaspora who long for a connection to their ancestral homes and lands. He uses Google Maps and crowdsourced knowledge of people who still live there to provide photographs of what those villages and the grounds and the structures look like today. He has even escorted Palestinians born in the diaspora or living as refugees through the borders of Palestine and back to these places of significance so they could pick the soil up in their hands and experience it once again for themselves. One such story is that of Kareem Saeed, a third-generation family member of Palestinian-American scholar Edward Said. Kareem is an award-winning pianist who was invited to perform in Ramallah, another city in the West Bank. Before his trip to Palestine, he reached out to Tarek to see if they might be able to go see the Said family home, which was lost during the Nakba. Using one single photograph of this home from 1947, Tarek was able to find the home, and in the couple hours they had before his piano recital, he brought Kareem there. It was occupied by an Israeli family, and they knew the storied history of the home well. They knew that it was built by the Saids and rented at various times by the Yugoslavian and the Iranian consulates, and even the philosopher Martin Buber and his family. Before Kareem left for his concert in Ramallah, the Israeli man told him, "Your family left this house to a warring state. You lost the ownership. I promised to take care of what used to be your family home, but it is my family home now." When I got home that night, I wrote in my journal, "How do we tell the truth?" If the purpose of our delegation was to witness the Palestinian experience and be in solidarity with their struggle, how could the truth that I experienced be used to inform, to soften, and change hearts and minds, mine and others? This is a theological question, because what we believe is true about the world shapes the way that we live and we love in it. It shapes what we fight for and what we build. It shapes what we leave behind when we go. Our Unitarian Universalist community is coalesced around a set of values: justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, generosity, and love. Before our recent bylaw change, we claimed a principle that stated that we affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Now, since the changes, if you search for the word truth in the description of our values, you find it only once, nestled under pluralism, which names our religious diversity and covenants to celebrate it. But truth, the search for it and how it changes our lives, it has more than just religious relevance. It impacts how we spend our money and how we cast our vote, where we place our empathy, who we build solidarity with, how we hold systems of power accountable. We are prescribed the truth, promised the truth, told to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And yet, we experience the world and report back to it in and through bodies, having incredibly subjective experiences. It seems that, in this, we are holding a paradox. Everything will always be subjective and experienced through our personal lens. And we are beholden to a standard of objective truth that is strong enough to support the inner workings and relationships of a society. We need truths that are strong enough and shared enough to build our lives upon. I'm finding that in an attempt to answer my own question, how do we tell the truth? I'm generating more questions. If I believe this, who benefits from me believing this? And if my beliefs are challenged, who is benefiting from my self-doubt? In short, who benefits from this thing being the truth? In the horror of the war unfolding in so many places, including Gaza and the West Bank, we are subject to false information offered to us as truth, which means we are witnessing more than just battles in these wars for resources and for power. We are in a battle over narratives, a battle over the historical record. The things that we are told feel like truths because they are produced or they're amplified by institutions and people that we think we can trust, that we want to trust. These things that we're told, they're packaged as complete, irrefutable stories, and they accommodate and uphold our current worldview. What is happening in the way that the world is talking about Palestine is so profound that a new word has been created to describe it. And this word is alethicide. Combining the Greek word for truth and the Latin suffix for kill, alethicide is the systematic and systemic destruction of truth. Coined by Northwestern professor Mark Owens-Jones, alethicide refers to a systematic strategy that not only erases truths around egregious acts of violence, but also actively constructs false narratives that seek to reshape societal norms, manipulate public opinion, and dismantle solidarity movements seeking to end violence. Our politicians and our media sources are complicit in this process because it serves to uphold these current systems of power. Now, the impact of alethicide, it's more than just telling a lie. It is the explicit and intentional act of creating and replicating falsehoods that are so evocative that they sway public opinion, legislation, and the way that we remember history. An example of alethicide is this. A couple years ago, the Wall Street Journal published an article falsely claiming that 10% of United Nations staff support Palestinian refugees had links to Hamas. While this claim was untrue, at that particular moment, it caused a freeze in $450 million in international funding to relief agencies responsible for feeding and sheltering Palestinian refugees. Now, while I was in Palestine, I visited the Aida refugee camp, which was established in 1950, and it houses at least 7,200 refugees in less than 1 square kilometer. I walked past kids playing wall ball and men sitting on narrow streets drinking tea. I bought this keffiyeh from one of them in the refugee camp. I met an activist and a teacher who recently got married, and while touching her stomach, she said, "I was born in Aida, my future child will probably be too." These are all people whose access to food and water and shelter depends on the UN Relief Agency. The claims that these staff supported Hamas were investigated deeply, and they were found to be untrue. Yet at that moment, public opinion was so successfully swayed by news reports that international funding never recovered, forcing the closure of health clinics, the limiting of water and electricity, and finally legislation passed by the Israeli parliament to restrict refugee support operations. On January 21st, which was the day that I returned to America, Israeli authorities demolished the headquarters of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. The spreading of false narratives like this matters. Even after being publicly recanted, they are often amplified by people in places of power, and that, to our system, feels like a truth. And once the toothpaste is out of that tube, there's no putting it back in. The stories that become our truths are powerful. Today's truth becomes the foundation on which yesterday's knowledge systems, cultures, and realities reside. So now I will bring us back to my original theological quandary. For us to accept the world the way that it is, rife with violence and propped up by lies of hierarchy and scarcity, we have to build a reality that legitimizes that. We have to tell stories and repeat them such that they are supported by the things that we claim as our truths. We have to say that we believe that this violent way of being together, this is true. During my trip, the tragedy of oppression and settler colonialism was displayed and accessible for me every day. I saw the segregated roadways and the hundreds of checkpoints that impeded free movement for Palestinians. I saw the rainwater collection tanks atop Palestinian homes that receive only rationed water and never enough. I sat in a Palestinian living room and had a conversation by candlelight after the electricity was cut. I saw Palestinian homes demolished and land encroached upon. So what do I believe is true? I believe it is true that all people should have freedom of movement. I believe it's true that all people should have access to clean air and shelter and water. I believe it's true that all children should be fed and safe and educated. I believe it's true that all people deserve connection to their ancestral land and their heritage and their culture. And I believe it's true that I can only know the sacred in myself if I know and see and look for the sacred in all other beings. Believing these things are true widens my path toward the vast horizon of love and peace. The Reverend Paige Getty suggests that our right and responsibility to engage in the free and responsible search for truth is an act of religious devotion. When we sing about or pray to the Spirit of life, we are calling upon the bravery and boldness that makes good use of our words and our actions and our lives. It is time that we consider truth to be a relationship that we nurture with care and rigor. So I invite us to listen to the truths being uttered by those with no power, being uttered by the arts, being uttered by the children, being uttered by the soil. May we attend to the finding and telling of our truths with the same care and devotion we tend to the things that we love the most. This, my friends, is the seedbed in which we grow the future. May we sow it in the spirit of truth. May it be so. Thank you.